Okay, there we go.
Okay. So, so we're gonna be continuing from last week, which
Yes.
I have a feeling we're probably just gonna be starting from scratch, but we'll see how that goes. So I think you prayed last week. Let me pray today, and then we can jump into it.
Sounds good.
Dear Heavenly Father, I know personally you've been putting on my mind the word praise, praise, praise. In this season, the question that's been kind of coming in the forefront of my mind is, you know, what has God given us to praise Him for? What reasons do we have to be full of praise? And in this season, sometimes it doesn't feel like there's much until one steps back and uh, really embrace the character, the identity of the Father we serve. So, Lord, I just want to praise you that we get to do this. I want to praise you that we get to be like iron that sharpens each other. I want to praise you that we get to uh, chew on your word and be changed by it. I want to praise you that we get to engage culture, engage things going on around us, engage questions we have from the perspective of what have you said. And so, Lord, we invite you into that process and be glorified in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So, do you want to introduce the topic?
So we started talking about this last week, and I did upload those to the Google Drive, but yeah, so you can look and see if they're worth sharing or not, because it's a little fragmented towards the end. But what we were talking about is we were talking mostly about discourse and what things are necessary to have a healthy dialogue. What does God have to say about listening versus speaking, and how can we kind of discern when we should speak up and when should we stay silent? And then how off track does someone have to be before it becomes unloving to not correct them? That's a little bit of a side tangential thing, so if we don't get to it, that's okay.
Do you remember the recap of kind of where we stopped?
Let's see. So I know we were talking about kind of that. I know I brought up that idea of that the hard center and the soft edges, and we were talking about is there almost kind of getting into like the idea of absolute truth, or are we and the idea kind of that no human being has a monopoly, I think, on what's true and what isn't necessarily, and we and so does that ring a bell for you?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Especially the like hardcore and soft, so hard center and soft exterior, right?
Yeah.
So I think the core thing that we were really working through is the idea of, are there things that you should be closed-minded to,
Right. Yeah.
and are there things that you should be open-minded to? So I think we wanted to like work through and because my position was we should never really be closed-minded to anything. We should always be open-minded, but that doesn't mean that there are certain things that are so baked and hard in what we believe that it's going to be much harder for them to change, right? Does that make sense?
I think so. So I think maybe what we should do is, because I think when we were talking about this last week, one of the we were kind of getting a little bit into the terms a little bit, I think. We were kind of getting a little bit lost in the terms. And so I think one thing that I would ask is what would you define open-mindedness as being?
So I think open-mindedness is, in its simplicity, I would just say the genuine intent um, to listen and entertain conflicting or even opposing thoughts on an issue.
Okay. So, I mean, I think then if that's the case, then I would totally agree with that. I think when I think of the term open-mindedness, it has a little bit of a different connotation to it than that. It like goes a little bit further in the direction of, if you're open-minded towards something, then, you know, it's not just that you're listening to it and even necessarily entertaining it, it's that is a thing that you're viewing as a factor or something that would change your opinion,
I
which
see.
I don't think should always necessarily be the case.
So let me.
I think we should always listen, and we should always examine all the things as much as possible, whether they're true or not, and all of these things. But I think at a certain point you have to kind of say, nope, this is what I believe, and that thing over there is wrong.
So I think the concept of being open-minded has nothing to do with your conclusions.
Okay.
So at least in my view, I think it has, and I think this is a fundamental part of discourse. I think sometimes what happens is, and I think this is kind of what we touched on last week. Sometimes what happens is we often retreat into a shell and become closed when people are making points that is making us revisit assumptions that we have built our lives on.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of a difficult balance between, you should remain open and you should continue to listen and you should continue to or I should continue to entertain those thoughts, but those thoughts are penetrating a part of me that I have feared that if I change or if I entertain, then my whole world will be kind of affected. Like I'm gonna have to
Okay.
rethink
So
so many.
so then I guess then the difference becomes, being closed-minded as a function of, like you're saying, of being afraid of your worldview being challenged, as opposed to being certain. And we talked about certainty a little bit last week too, but being certain that what you believe is true. I
Mm-hmm.
think those are two different things. And so
Yes.
I think the only time when it's okay to be, closed-minded as it were, is only when you have thoroughly examined and entertained all of those different ideas and opinions on a topic and sifted through them for the truth, to where you've come to a place where I am fairly certain that I know that I know what the truth is on this topic. You know what I mean? But I think if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't done that, then you have no business being closed-minded about anything.
It still begs the question: why be closed-minded on it?
Well, because at some point you kind of have to decide what you believe. Otherwise, you'll just be entertaining everything forever and never know what anything means.
So, let me ask you this: Does the guest you invite into, so let's use the closed as a door, right?
Okay.
And the entertaining of thoughts as, like, have allowing people come into your house,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So if we kind of use that framework of thinking, then the question would be, if you are certain about, like, the relationship status or whatever of you and your spouse or even your siblings or whatever, right? The way I kind of look at it would be like, if I'm certain that that's my sister, I shouldn't be afraid of anybody that comes through the door and says and challenges the fact that, or maybe says, "Oh, I'm also your sister." Then it's like, you know, um, sure, if you're also my sister, fine. Then it doesn't negate the sister that I know has been my sister, but
Sure.
it gives me new things to ponder and say, oh, maybe I've made the assumption that, like, I may have been certain I only have three sisters, right? Now maybe I have a fourth one, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
idea of being open-minded is saying, let the information come through.
Yeah.
Don't shut up the possibility that you may actually have siblings that you
Mm-hmm.
didn't know about.
What
Just
about,
because you were
sorry, were you finished with what
no,
you were?
I was just gonna say, just because you are certain that you only have three sisters and you built your life around that assumption, doesn't mean now that if somebody comes at the door, you close your mind and say, no, 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 you look like a sibling. No, stay out there because I only have three. That's kind of the idea of the close for
Okay.
me, like the certainty. So whereas I'm saying, if I'm so certain that I have three sisters, it shouldn't impact the fact that I leave the door open for somebody that could come and claim that they're my sister.
Right.
And then if they come in and claim that they're my sister, it actually doesn't change anything I have learned about these three sisters. It just means that maybe my certainty that I only have three sisters is wrong,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. I like that analogy. And I want to throw in just one other potential scenario with that, and just see what you think about this. So what if you're there and your sister is there and somebody else comes into the house and doesn't say, I am also your sister, but says that person who you think is your sister is not your sister.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're certain that that is your sister, what do you do with that?
You just say, present your data.
And they have terrible data, and it doesn't convince you that that is not your sister.
And then it doesn't.
Do
So,
you just do you just let them stay in the house, or do you kick them out?
so, so that has no bearing on being closed-minded in the sense that being closed-minded to me in that scenario is I will let you in. If you come in and you disrespect my family, I can kick you out.
Right.
But me kicking you out doesn't necessarily mean I'm closing the door because I still leave the door to somebody else that wants to come in.
Right. Oh yeah, but you close the door to that particular thing that you are certain is not the case.
No, no,
That's what
to
I'm
that
saying.
particular person or that particular because
Or to that idea, you know.
so I wouldn't so because I think the idea of it's kind of weird because I think the idea of closed-minded. I think generally we're closed-minded to people, not usually closed-minded to ideas,
That's
and it's
interesting
kind of
because I don't think I would say that. I would say it's
yeah.
almost the other way around. Is that I would rather be open-minded to people and closed-minded to certain ideas.
So no, no, no. So that's what I'm saying. That's how you want to be.
Yeah.
But I'm saying in the way it's set up,
Mm-hmm.
when somebody says I'm closed-minded, we're generally not closed-minded to ideas because if I come in and I say, you have that's not your sister. Even if you kick me out, that thought still lingers. You don't have a choice on whether you're going to be open or closed to an idea because an idea will, you're going to think about it. You may
Yes, but
intentionally resist it.
it still doesn't change my knowledge that that's my sister.
Yes, 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 yes. So, but again, using that framework, right? So you're talking about what you're certain about. But
Right.
usually, what I'm trying to just speak about is generally we confuse the need to be certain with the need to be closed-minded.
Okay.
So I'm saying your certainty should only change when you have new valid information or data that
Yes.
truly challenges what you're certain about.
Yes. And I think too,
But
whenever that kind of information comes up, you should always, whenever there's new valid information that's presented to you, you should always be open-minded towards it, because
yes,
yeah, because then we run into that trap you're talking about before of not entertaining things because they challenge our worldview, not because they are wrong.
Yes, exactly. But that's the exact point that
Yeah.
um. But if you close the door, so if you close your mind,
Hmm.
right, because of your certainty, you would never let somebody in that would have provided the information to you that you have a fourth sister. So in a bid to protect the your three sisters from being attacked or challenged that they are not your sister, you actually close yourself up to finding out that you have a fourth sister. So that's why you have to, for me, the way I look at it is I have to keep an open mind. I have to keep the door open. But um, I also need to know when to kick somebody that's in the house, kick them out,
Right.
and
And I
and
think,
also
yeah, I think we're kind of getting to the same
yes,
place. Yeah.
yes, and then also just because I kick them out doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that I don't let other people in, because the difficulty is sometimes when we have a bad experience with people that come in and make a mess, whether they created doubt in us or they attacked some core things or whatever. Our reaction is, I'm going to shut the door to everybody or everything that looks like XYZ because I don't like the way it made me feel, or I don't like how it challenged me so much.
Yeah.
But the hard balance isn't to say, um, no. I need to keep the door open, because if I'm going to be a true searcher of truth, then I have to believe that I don't have everything figured out. And so by keeping the door open, I continue to learn, even in areas that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I now have to figure out, how do I handle when there is when people are attacking and not presenting, when people are not having discourse, when they're not, it's like someone come in and it's like, it's not even trying to have a conversation or clear the room. They just brought a dagger out and just like poking your sister. It's like, okay, that's not, that's
Right.
not, um, we're not going to let that happen. If you
Yeah.
have information, this is how we present it, which maybe goes into the third part of your question.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I think that's kind of goes, yeah, kind of is we're touching on other parts of this question a little bit now as well, where, um so we've kind of established, yeah, in order to have healthy dialogue, I think, yeah, there has to be at least a certain amount of open-mindedness there, of listening to what the other person has to say, of respecting the opinions of somebody else, and not just coming in with a dagger. We don't want people to do that to us, so we also have to ensure that we are not doing that to other people. And I think we touched on this a little bit last time as well when we were talking about this, is that um is the so often I think discourse turns away from a mutual desire to find the truth, and it turns into, we're just trying to see who can win this discussion. And I think that's one of the biggest, one of the, like, the most unhealthy probably thing you can do in a conflict, is try to win the discussion, as opposed to, let's work together and find out what the truth is. Yeah.
But I think it's very easy to say, let's work together. But as broken people, we're talking about, hey, if you come into my house, even if you're presenting data in the most courteous, whatever manner, you potentially are just telling me that I have lived 29 years of my life believing that I have three sisters, and now I'm learning that I have seven more. Like, I mean, like, I don't care how nice and everything you presented, that's still something that sometimes you're like, hey, I don't want to think about.
Yeah.
I'm not in the mood, or I'm not interested. So, like, information isn't always like, what's the word? Not agnostic, but like, it's not always neutral.
Yeah.
sometimes it's very much personal. The way the information hits you can feel like you're being attacked, even if you're not. It's
Right.
just the truth is so heavy.
That's a really interesting point too, because I think, in these types of discussions, especially when people get into, like politics or stuff like that, and I am like the prime example of this, because I'm a very like rational and sort of data oriented person. So it's like if you so it to me it always comes down to, well, who makes a better empirical argument or things like that. But that's not always the case in these discussions. And like we were saying too, it's like if somebody has a worldview and some point that someone is making is challenging that worldview, yeah, they believe they have three sisters and you just found out they have a fourth. That challenges their whole way that they've seen themselves and the way they've seen their family members and the way they've looked at their life. And that's not always an easy thing. Like, the information can be as correct as you want, but yeah, that's not always an easy thing to wrap your head around immediately if it's something that is, yeah, that like something I believed my whole life is now wrong. What do I do with that? And so I guess the question with that then is, as so there's two sides of this. As a person who has received this information that is challenging our worldview, what's the best way to respond? And then as a person who is delivering this type of information, what is the best way of doing that, to do it without hurting that person, but to also show them, like, this is what's true. I care about you. I want you to know what's true, but I also don't want to hurt you while I'm telling you it. So yeah, it's kind of a twofold question there, I guess.
Yeah. So I think the example that come to mind are not appropriate. I'm just gonna have to find a different analogy. But the general answer that we've seen to that in nature, not even logic or whatever, in nature, it's but it's generally you you push. So okay, on the side of delivering, right? You 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 need to understand the person's threshold to receive, whether it's the person's threshold to receive pain, or it's the person's threshold to receive truth, or the person's threshold to whatever it is, right? You have to understand what that person's threshold is. And so um, oftentimes what we do is it's like, oh, I don't care. I'm just gonna blast you. And then it's your business to figure out if it hurts or not. That's your
I am
business. I'll
so
just
guilty of that. It's really bad.
I'll just I'll just drop the bomb and then walk away. But generally, the way that I've seen in nature and whatnot is you may push, you can push, but once you notice that they're incapable of taking in more, you actually hold and then wait until they have expanded their capacity to receive,
Mhm.
and then you add a little bit more. But the thing is, the timing between when they expand their capacity to receive isn't something that sometimes it's some people it's give me a moment, they do the blank stare, whatever, and then they can take more. For some people, especially depending on the truth and how core or essential it is, it could be years. um so I think on that side for sure it's about, yeah, being intentional to really understand the other person's threshold, and then you help them push through that threshold by being patient, and you also understanding whatever that threshold is. So
Right.
um, you know um, the
I'm
example that
sorry.
comes.
Sorry, Jessica's right here outside my window. I'm talking with Delapo.
Hi, Jessica.
He says hi.
I was wondering, I was like, she usually greets me so right away. Why is she so distracted? Don't disrupt too much.
Okay.
Hi, Nalapa.
Hey.
Sorry. Continue.
Yeah. So yeah. So what was I saying? Yeah. So like in medical terms, the example would be like um, if somebody has an injury, right? Um, and it's like really deep, like painful and whatnot, right? Sometimes, sometimes the solution is you actually give them like pain medication to like knock out the pain and make it numb. That's a form of kind of expanding their capacity to take the pain. Um, um, you know, for some, if some will tell you, I got it, I can take the pain or whatever, and then you go ahead and do, and then while you're doing it, you're constantly getting feedback like, are you okay? Are you alright? Do you want to stop? Whatever. Um, Another example would be like, a mom about to deliver a baby. Like you didn't just tell the mom, just push. Like, you know, that's why like labor can take from I don't know, 5 minutes. I don't know, 5 minutes to like days, right? Because you have to like help gently push through the threshold that the person has, right? So I think for that one, that would be the way so on the delivering side. But I think on the receiving side, I think it's kind of the same. On the receiving side, um, one, the person has to be willing to um, um, you need to understand what your thresholds are, right? Not leave it up to other people to determine that for you. And when you know what your thresholds are, then when your threshold is reached, then you need to communicate it and say, look, what you're saying, I want to hear more of it, but right now I think I need to like kind of shut down or process, or you've given me enough to think through. And then you take that, go process it, and then when you feel like, okay, I think I can digest more. It's kind of like eating food, right? So, I'm eating right now. Um, I have a bowl, right? Um, it would almost be like, imagine if I just grab this and I just shove it all in my mouth, right? That's not how we eat. We take, my capacity is maybe 1 or 2 spoons at a time. So you take 1 spoon, you eat it, you digest it, and then you take more. So it's kind of that same concept of, if I'm receiving, then it should be, hey, I can take this much at a time. Once it's too much, then communicate out to say, hey, I need some time. Let me digest this one. Um, and it's capacity, but then it's also interest, I think, because you know I may have the capacity to eat beans, like whole bowl of beans. Doesn't mean that I enjoy beans, right? So um, depending, I guess, on the type of thing that you're also receiving, I guess, almost treating it kind of like food. Um, you know, Maybe you may have different thresholds for different truth, quote unquote. So the time it takes me to process the fact that the sky is blue may not be the same time it takes me to process that my dad has 3 wives. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good way of looking at it from both directions, where it's like and from what you're describing too, and I would agree with this, is that I think in order to have a healthy discourse with somebody, a healthy discussion, it requires some relational investment
Mm-hmm.
in actually caring about the other person, and on the receiving end, being receptive to what that other person has to say, respecting their opinion as they're giving it to you, and then on the giving end, respecting the person you're giving to, and recognizing that you may be causing damage by giving this to them and not wanting to hurt them as a person while also not wanting them to be hurt by whatever misinformation they may be are holding as an opinion. And so I guess my question from that is it possible to have a healthy discourse about something without, you know, that relational aspect to it, you know? And I'm thinking of examples of like comment wars on, you know, Facebook or whatever, and people just laying into each other who like have never even met before in person, and nobody's mind gets changed, everybody just gets upset, you know? Is it as like a and that's like the bottom of the barrel in terms of relational interaction going on, and mutual respect and all of that. But like, is it possible, do you think, I don't know, to have a healthy discourse with somebody that you have no relationship with?
Yes, yes, it is. But I mean, so so the way I'll put it is, it's impossible to communicate anything without it being a relational moment, if you will. So, have you ever texted somebody, which happens to me all the time because I love texting, but have you ever texted at somebody and then the person say, that is not a text conversation?
Oh yeah, I do that all the time
Um,
actually.
okay.
People
Do,
text
do
me
you
and
know
I'm,
why they do that?
well, I know why I do it, which is because usually it's somebody has asked me a question that would either require me to write a long paragraph that could be, you know, misread or not read fully or something like that, and it would just be easier to convey the answer to that question by talking. Because, and also, yeah, you don't get the nonverbals, you don't get um you know, the intonations or the expression or whatever. It's just, yeah, it's just not quite the same.
Okay. So basically, the question you're asking, basically what's happening is people are having text conversations for issues that requires a phone call.
Yeah.
So when you go to the comment section and stuff, right? Depending on the issue, if you're discussing an issue that you cannot text um, and come to a resolution, then basically leaving comments back and forth is essentially equivalent to and for the need for the need for a call is not one directional. It's as long as one of the party needs a phone call or an in-person communication to articulate,
Hmm.
um, then basically doing it via text is basically, or doing it by comment, basically you're not communicating, right?
Right.
But I think it goes to the issue of the relationship you're saying. I don't think when we talk about relationships, sometimes we assume that it is this long, deep, I've known you 20 years, right? But relationship is really just um, you can have a relationship with a stranger. That is a relationship, right?
Sure.
But the way you relate with a stranger still stands on the shoulder of the knowledge you have gleaned about humanity in general. So it's still a relationship, even if you're applying generic knowledge, right, and not specific knowledge. But it's still a relationship. So if I, for example, if I go online and I'm arguing Chelsea fans, Arsenal fans, so Chelsea and Arsenal, those are soccer teams. They just played yesterday, and Chelsea got
I
beat
was
3-1.
about to be really stupid and ask, what is that?
Yeah, yeah. So Chelsea's my team. We played yesterday, and Arsenal. We played a cup final, and we lost to them, right? And then we go online, and then we're bantering, right? So it's still a relationship because I know some basic stuff about Arsenal fans, right? I know some basic stuff about Arsenal fans, right? So, I know maybe some of the stuff they've gone through, some of the pains, blah 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 blah, right? So, um, for example, Arsenal right now they're known to be a losing team. Like for many years now, they haven't won much in the blah blah. So imagine if I go in and I say, "Shut up, y'all losers," right? Basically, I have already triggered different Arsenal fans will have different thresholds in response to that bite, right?
Sure.
And so if I keep on shoving in my own whatever, then essentially I'm gonna lose some, I'm gonna win some, which is no different from what we've been saying. So I think it still comes down to like to the question: can I share it with somebody that I don't have a relationship with? Yes, you can. You would just need to be very careful to not to use language and be very careful and skilled to use language that um, that will get your message across without creating ambiguity and without attacking or creating a hostile or triggering an emotion, right?
Right.
And then that becomes harder the more people you have in the room. So
Yeah.
for example, a pastor that's preaching to a church that is diverse. You have African Americans, you have whites, you have Asians, you have right. Um, um, I mean, you've probably seen this, right? You can have a pastor preach a message and try to get this message across, and the African Americans are nodding. Oh yes, preacher, brother, that is on point. And the Asians are like, what the heck is going on here, right? Because
Yeah.
you know, and the same message, the same whatever could have been preached without maybe the trigger languages or the whatever, and you still get the exact same across to all three parties, right? So, but it takes being skilled and being in tune with like the audience and their triggers, their thresholds, because part of trigger is also part of threshold is also triggers.
Yeah. I would hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot of good stuff in there. Yeah, I think that's true that pretty much, yeah, anytime you talk to anyone, it's relational, and I think as well, not just in your presentation, the information in a way that you hope is not going to be hurtful to somebody, but you're also at the same time kind of observing the audience and their response as well, to be like, all right, how are they doing with this? Should I continue, or should I back it up and try something else that will hopefully not be as you say, triggering to so many people? But I think there is a, like, when you are speaking truth, I think there is a point though where you can be as skillful as you want and as loving as you want and as unhurtful as possible, and someone is still going to have a problem with it.
So okay, okay, because I think we're getting into the territory of triggers then.
Okay.
So let me see.
Like
So
a pastor preaching a message, like, isn't always going to be able to preach a message of truth in such a way that it triggers no one, you know.
Yes.
Ideally it wouldn't, but ideally we as humans, as a congregation listening, are not triggered by the truth, and we have a solid enough grasp on the truth that we can hear the truth and go, yes, this is the truth. But in a large audience, when you're speaking, I think it's almost impossible to teach something that is true and not offend someone, or not. Yeah.
So so the goal is not to not offend anybody. The goal
Right.
is not to not trigger anybody. In fact, I'll make the argument. The Bible talks about, the word is a two-edged sword
Yeah.
that pierces the heart of man. That is trigger all day long.
Yeah, and even Jesus says that too. He's like, I came not to bring peace but a sword, and he's all the time, calling out the Pharisees and saying inflammatory things that were very offensive. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think the intent or the goal is not to trigger, but I think when we're talking about threshold, um, the threshold for pain is that trigger. If I push an area where you have injury, you're gonna jump up. That's trigger.
Hmm.
The idea of threshold is to say it's not that you don't have pain. It's how much can I poke or push a trigger or a painful thing, right? Without getting um, um, without exceeding the threshold of the person to receive or stay triggered. Does that make sense?
Okay. Okay. Sure.
So, for example, let's say a preacher goes and is teaching something, and like, I don't know, history of Black American, and then he uses the N word. He uses the N word in context. This is a quote by blah 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 blah, and then he uses the N word, right? And then he looks around, and everyone's like, "Oh, that is so good, Pastor Preacher. That is so real. Thanks for that." But then the Black audience is like, he just used the N word, right? And then the preacher supervisor looks around and is oblivious and is just right, and then continues to like, "Oh, I have 5 more quotes that has the N word in it," and then continue, right? I think the idea there would be: is it possible for you to like teach this message, or for you to bring this truth without continuing to like trigger, right? Now, if the truth requires, like, you can't get it, you cannot speak about it without, then it's by all means. But um, anyway, but I think it's kind of yeah. I think it's a very delicate thing, but I think it's at the end of the day, for me, I think it comes down to empathy, and by empathy, really, empathy is like for me, the umbrella for being intentional to put yourself in the shoes of the other person. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and when you do that, you start to feel their pain, feel their thresholds, feel their triggers, right? And then that helps you to be skilled at, knowing when to hit the gas, when to
Yeah.
hit the clutch, when to hit the brakes, right?
It's
While continue to, drive the car forward.
right. It's and another analogy I can think of for this is like a say a patient has a tumor or something, and in order to get it out, to remove it, the doctor has to inflict some pain. um, but the goal of the doctor is to inflict as little pain as possible and to inflict as little damage to the surrounding tissue as possible. The only thing they want to remove is the bad part. They want to leave everything else as intact as they can do it. And so yeah, they do it very, very skillfully and very delicately. And also I think the important thing to keep in mind there too is the intention is not to hurt the person or make them look stupid or make them feel bad about the opinion that they had, but so that, but for their good. So like the doctor removing this tumor, like it's going to hurt while I'm doing it, but the goal is that you will overall be healthier after I have done this. And so it's always, I think, always coming at the interaction with that goal of not to win the argument or anything like that, but to benefit the person that you're talking to by giving them maybe some information that they weren't already familiar with, or presenting it in a new light that's going to, yeah. I think,
I,
yeah.
I love that. I love the intention part. And I think also to kind of buttress that though, what do you do when somebody, because I think this is also one of the questions you asked.
Mm-hmm.
If I care about somebody and they're going around, they don't have truth or whatever, right? When is it not love, or when is it love to like stop giving it to them or something? How did you
Well,
phrase the
yeah,
question?
that was the question, where it's like when you see someone who's going off track, a lot of people would say, well, it's unloving of me to like let them continue in that way without correcting them, because they're only hurting themselves by doing it. But we want to correct them in a way that's also not going to hurt them, or hurt them as little as possible, because it probably will hurt them. Correction is never a comfortable thing. I think of like a parent, who sees their, and not to say that all relationships are like this, but like a parent who sees their kid, you know uh reach for the stove, and the parent like pulls them back, like, no, 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 don't do that, that's bad. And the child is like, this, you grabbed me and pulled me away, that was not cool, that was painful. But the parent is like, I did that to you to preserve you from the greater pain that you would have had by touching the stove and burning your hand. It's kind of a situation like that. It's like, when is the point where we just kind of let people go and make their own mistakes and decisions and hopefully come to the truth on their own? Or when is the point where we, as their brother and sister in Christ, or as someone who cares about them, step in and try to redirect them?
Yep. I love that question. So you're not gonna like the answer, but the answer for me is you cannot love. So when the Bible says love others as you love yourself, I always find that fascinating that it didn't say love others more than you love yourself. It says love others as you love yourself, because it kind of balances the seesaw, right? Because the more you love yourself, the more you love others. And then when you find yourself loving somebody more than you love yourself, right? It's not good. It's not healthy, right? And in this case, I feel like maybe in the flip or reverse of it, I think um, the point I'm the point I'm driving at here is this: if somebody has tumor in their brain and you know that they do, you owe it to them to let them know that they have tumor.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't grab them, stick them in a chair, tie their hands, give them numbing pain meds or numbing whatever, or anesthesia to knock them to sleep, and then start operating in their head, right? The Our responsibility is to say, hey, dude, I think you have cancer in your brain. I can help you get it checked out. It's their responsibility to say, are you serious? Okay, I'm down. Let's go get it checked out. But what we often do when we shove truth down the throat of people is they are resisting truth. They have clearly indicated they don't want it. They have clearly indicated that they say, hey, you're a crappy doctor. There's no tumor in my head. Get out of here, right? But we still keep piling on and plowing through. And I think that is the where that is where I think it gets it gets past, which is that seesaw balance of loving others as you love yourself. If I'm in that person's shoe, would I want somebody to love me more than my choice?
Mm, interesting. Okay. Huh. I'm I'm like
You're thinking,
thinking about this analogy here.
can you think of a point or a place where an adult person would be um, would feel loved
Mhm.
that somebody violated their choice?
Yeah. Well, so honestly, what this is making me think of is this is kind of what God does with us, where He gives us
That's what I was doing.
His word and He gives us, the means to salvation. Um, but He doesn't ever force us to choose Him. He
Yes,
just says, here it is, take it or don't. Um,
that's
and,
exactly what I'm saying.
which is interesting because another analogy that popped into my head is like if somebody is in a burning building, you know, you would think that it would be the loving thing to do to run in and carry them out of the burning building. But what you're kind of saying is like the more loving thing is to walk in and be like, yo, the building's on fire. You should maybe get out. And then let them decide if they want to get out or not.
Yes. You to take it one step further, the more love you have for the person, right? You make it easy for them to make the choice to want to get out. So you can say, "Hey, the building is on fire. I have gotten you a ladder out in that window.
Mm-hmm.
There's a nice big giant mattress on the other side. All you need to do is look up and just jump, and there's gonna be a mattress to take. If you don't want to do that, I can come and carry you myself. I got, blah, 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 blah. Or you know what? I have ordered ice and I can ice a path for us to get out of the building, right? So, so love in that scenario would be, I'm going to do everything I can to make it easy for them to entertain the thought of this diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
or this whatever may be good for me. But
Right.
we,
Well, it's oftentimes too, I think, if we say the person is in the burning building, you try to grab them and drag them out, a lot of times all that does is just cause them to dig their heels in and fight you more, and be less receptive to what it is that you're trying to tell them,
yes,
which is
because that's not
interesting.
because that's not love. Love does not violate choice.
Hmm. Interesting. I'm trying to think if there's like I feel like that's it sounds like it should be something that's in like First Corinthians 13 or something, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
But that's an interesting thought, and I hadn't really heard it put in those terms before. Love does not violate choice. We should put maybe that on a t-shirt or something.
but,
um,
but but
yeah.
yeah, and I think that's why I like that tie into like love others as yourself, because it's a balanced love, right? It's a balanced love. It's the way you would, but I guess the thing that the kind of ones that can be open with that is the question of, well, um, if I'm to love others as I love myself, I would want him to tell me, um, if I'm being stubborn and stupid. I would want him to like force me down and do surgery on my brain. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah. Or
Because
like I'm in a burning building. I would want someone to come in and drag me out if I didn't know it was on
yes,
fire.
exactly. Or like, yeah, I would, but I think the yeah, the overwhelming factor is, if something is true, we may have the burden to communicate and emphasize it. But if something is true, then uh, so like if it's true that somebody has tumor, right? in their brain. And I come in and I tell, and so there's two ways. I can come in and say, dude, you got tumor. Take care of it. I can help. Call me. That's my number. Walk away. Right? Another approach is you can come and say, hey, I think you have tumor. Do you have these symptoms? List all these 7 things. If you don't feel like answering right now, that's okay. I'm going to leave you with the pamphlet so you can look at the questions and see the symptoms. And on top of that, if you're in stage 3 or stage 4, which I suspect you are, when you see these things, these other symptoms start to come, this is going to be proof that you definitely do have tumor. So if you don't believe me now, that's fine. But just keep this in mind. And, if it keeps happening, then please, this is a number for me to call. And then sure enough, what happens? I may not believe it today, but if my symptom continues to track just like you said, then what happens, right? I'll probably give you a call. Or, and this is kind of a touchy or interesting, hopefully it's not a triggering, whatever. What if the person has tumor, they know they have tumor, but they rather die than because they're tired of living?
Or they
Is
don't
it
want to
love
go
to save
through
them?
the pain
Right.
of the treatment
The
or
pain
whatever.
of the
Yeah.
treatment. Right. So is it love to hijack them and get them treated?
These
So
loaded questions, man.
yeah, it's
I
yeah.
feel like we also just infuriated a whole bunch of Calvinists.
Yeah, because I think the difficult thing is sometimes we think that we love people or we know people more than they know themselves. And so we make decisions sometimes based on how we would feel or what we would want or what we want for them. But we don't know what's going on in that tiny little brain of theirs. We don't know what choices they're making. We don't know what they're preferring. We don't know the repercussion of the thing that we're offering. Just like we were saying, like the hardcore, right? Let me give you an example. If somebody comes out today and says, Talako, we have found the tomb of Jesus and it has his bones in it. And there's been carbon dating and all this stuff, and it's precise. I don't want to have that conversation anytime soon. Right? So imagine that other person is saying, hey, like, dude, I think you're living a lie. Right?
Yeah.
My question would be, well, if I'm living a lie, this version of lie sounds pretty good than whatever other version I'm gonna be, right? So is it love that you jerking me out of the beautiful life that I've been living?
Well, and that's one thing that I would say is another factor involved in this is what are the stakes of it? So it's like if it they find Jesus' tomb and there are bones inside it and it's whatever, and supposedly proven that he died and is still dead and whatever. It's like, how much does it cost me in my life to say that that's fake? Not a whole bunch, my life is still going to be the same as it was before. I'm living, I might be living a lie, but it's a nice lie. It's a happy lie. It gives me hope. It gives me joy. It gives me faith in something bigger than myself. It's a nice lie. But on the other hand, though, it's like for the biggest example possible is, the gospel. It's like, how high are the stakes? It's like, you can live in that lie, but you have basically thrown away your eternity, you know, for that those are very high stakes. You know what I mean? And so I think that kind of spurs almost this sense of urgency. Like, I really want you to get out of this burning building because I see it burning around you and you're about to die. And I'm like really worried about you as a person.
But
You know,
again, but again, oh sorry, go ahead.
no, oh no, I was done.
But again, right? You've loved me more than I love myself, because for me, what if living today is more important to me than living in eternity?
Then you're going to
So let me,
regret that a lot.
but that's what I want. Let me. You know, we were using the example of Jesus, and I think that one can sometimes feel far, right? Because it's
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah, that's what I gotta have, blah, 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 right? I know a lot of, let me not even use I know. Let me use myself. Um, there's people that have been in relationships where they've they suspect that their spouse is cheating on them, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the person that tells them the truth, they punch. Like, I'll punch you if you because because
It
because
was
because
nicer to not know. Yeah.
yeah, because the guy is coming home, kisses his wife. They have a good time. Everything is good. The routine and everything is nice, right? And this truth potentially is about to throw his life into it. It's at least in depression. He knows it. It's at least in depression. So then you're like, hey, I'm your friend. If I love you, I'm gonna tell you the truth. And he's like, but I don't want the truth.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? But I don't want the truth. And you're like, well, you're living a lie. You're prioritizing short term for long term. If you find out now, you guys can begin to either make a decision to build something better. And he's like, I don't care. I like coming home to cold ice cream. I like coming home to all these things. Like just don't mess with. Do not mess with my life. I don't want. I've been in a depression before. I don't want to go back there.
Yeah.
What is love in that situation? But and more importantly, you will not know that is why the person is resisting your truth unless you have been intentional to have the dialogue of the relationship,
Yeah.
right? If you haven't, so I think it's ultimately that's kind of the summary, right? So it's like, what is when I'm giving, what's my intent? Am I aware of the person's threshold? Am I aware of the person's triggers? Right? Am I skilled in the way that I'm speaking or sharing? And then it's also, am I respecting the person's choice? And the fact that love is not, what was the thing we said? Love doesn't violate choice. Is that what we said?
Yeah, love doesn't overrule another person's choice.
Yep,
That was, I
yep,
think, the gist of it. Yeah.
yep. So yeah. Um,
Interesting.
is there any other kind of question around there that we didn't touch on?
Um, well, maybe one thing that would be interesting is to look at it from the other side, from, as somebody who has received an uncomfortable truth that maybe doesn't fit with your current worldview or something. What what is a healthy way of dealing with that? Because that's, I
Okay.
think, the only thing we haven't really talked about.
Okay. So the number one thing that I've been, at least especially around this issue, that I've been learning is fear. What role does fear play?
Mm,
and learning to default to kicking the butt of fear,
Yeah.
because because majority of majority of the reasons why I would not want to accept truth and whatnot is because I am afraid of where it'll take me. I am afraid of the work that it's adding to my plate. I am afraid of um, the changes that will result from it. I am afraid of who I will become by exploring it. Uh, yeah, I think those are kind of, so for me the healthy way would be to first identify what am I afraid of, and then being comfortable and okay with the fact that I have fear because I'm a human. But then the fear will also act as a guide to my thresholds. Um, so it's like if I'm afraid of XYZ, it's almost like a child that's about to jump in the deep end of a pool for the first time, right?
Hmm.
Yes, you're afraid of it, but what do? You don't just push the child and jump, right? I once I recognize that I'm afraid of this and this way is big, what do? I'll first go sit on the edge of the pool, dip my foot. Then maybe I'll go get like a like a floating device, put it on, and then jump in.
Hmm.
Um, and then so I'll take steps
Yeah.
until eventually I can now jump fully in and then feel the bliss that comes from attacking my fear, and possibly even the reality of feeling like I'm about to drown, right?
Yeah.
So I think for me, like that would be the healthy way for me would be just, yeah, itemizing what am I afraid of, you know, what, and then putting together a plan that gradually pushes me through my fears to face them.
Yeah.
And by facing my fears, I will be going to places that challenges my current worldview. But then, I'm gonna commit to whoever I become, whoever I become through this. Um, I would embrace, right? I would embrace the journey of letting truth, um, letting truth kind of, change me. And I think a third piece of it too would be there's got to be a framework upon which I engage the truth with. So, um, what do I mean by that? Like, if you're conducting an experiment, you don't want to have five different variables that you're trying to solve for. Generally, you solve for one, and then once you get your answer, you solve for the second one, and then solve for the third one, right? What oftentimes happens is, um, like, I don't want to take a nebulous, oh, I'm just going to engage truth. And then, what that means is tomorrow I'm a Christian, the next day I'm a Muslim, the day after that I'm a Buddhist, right? Because I'm just engaging truth. It's like, no, 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 no. Me engaging truth doesn't mean that I have to throw away everything that I have validated in my life. I can say, I want to, there's these five things that challenge the way my worldview. I'm going to take it one at a time, work through it, integrate the learnings into my beliefs, right? And then attack the next one, as opposed to trying to attack all five of them at the same time. And then what happens is I'm probably going to get out of balance and then lose some of my core, right? And it would not be losing it or evolving it in a healthy way. It'll be generally um, believing lies because I've opened myself to too many um, too many things that challenge me, right? Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
the example that kind of comes to mind is, yeah, I don't know if you watch MMA. It'll be like going to battle 5 different people in the same ring, right? Like, you're gonna be vulnerable and get hit, right, from angles that you can't prepare for. Versus, okay, I want to fight these 5 people. I'm gonna prepare myself, put in whatever, fight this guy. When I'm done, right, then I fight the next guy. Then I find the same thing. Fight, whether it's fear or engaging the truth, it's you're gonna fight one at a time. If not, you're gonna go in, fight 5 of them at the same time, and they're just gonna knock you out. And you're not gonna be recognizable, right? Because it's impossible to take on that many and not be vulnerable to hits that basically changes you almost forever.
Well, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning about the hard center and the soft edges, kind of, where you maintain your core for the most part, and then kind of engage with other things as they come along as well. And I think to go along with that is a sense of not of humility and not holding on too tightly to opinions. I think is a thing where like you talk about the fear of oh my goodness, my whole worldview is going to be uprooted if this thing that this person is telling me is true. But if you are kind of humble about your worldview and you say, well, this is what I think based on the information that I have, based on what I've been given, and there might be other stuff out there that would challenge that. I don't know. I haven't learned everything yet that there is to know. And so then when somebody comes at you with some new information that you haven't encountered before, then you're able to say, oh, this is new information that doesn't necessarily fit with what I had originally thought. And it's like in the scientific method, you don't try to rearrange the findings of your experiment to fit your preconceived notions over here, but you change your preconceived notions to fit the findings of the experiment.
Perfect.
And I think that's the kind of attitude that we have to come at it with. And so that way, when we're presenting,
and that's the open-minded part.
Right. And so I think that's a really good just general perspective to have in life as a whole. As people present you with information that might be new to you, you go, oh, interesting, let me examine it, let me evaluate it next to things that I know are true, and let's dig into it. And that's the other thing I say too, is to never simply just take things at face value, where somebody says something, oh, okay, I'm going to adopt that as my new. So it's like there's a balance there between being moldable in your worldview to be able to incorporate new information as it comes along. But then there's also the other extreme, of being so loose with it that it's like everything I'm going to accept. And it's like, well, you have to be able to weigh things and examine things thoroughly and do your research and listen to multiple different perspectives on an issue, examine it from as many different angles as possible, with the ultimate goal of getting to, what's actually true, rather than just saying, ooh, this one sounds good, I think I'm going to adopt that, and then everything else over here I'm going to not like because it doesn't sound as good as the first one that I heard, and then you hold on to that so tightly that all of the new information, can't possibly change your opinion after that.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have to have a framework for turning data into information and for turning information into application.
Yeah.
And that framework cannot change or shouldn't be influenced by your preference or your bias.
Right. Ideally.
So I was going to ask you, I was gonna ask you for the sake of application,
Hmm.
how about we play a little game?
Ooh. Okay.
It's not gonna be a fun game, honestly. I
Oh dear.
promise. So the game is, what if we take the example of somebody found that there is a tomb in Jerusalem or wherever of Jesus,
Hmm.
and science universally agreed without a shadow of a doubt it's of Jesus and his bones are there. Let's imagine if somebody is presenting that to us. What is a healthy way to take that information, right? What
Yeah.
questions should we ask? What
Hmm.
fears will it trigger? And how do we, um, um, how would we journey through that?
Yeah. Oh, I, d- I don't like this question at all. Um, because, well, okay, so this is one of the reasons why I would struggle with this one more than, like a political issue or something like that, is because this is hitting at my hard center. This is one of those things that I have decided that I am certain of, and that I have chosen then to stake my eternity on it, and I have chosen to live my life in accordance with it being true. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, if this is a thing, then it ruins it ruins everything.
Exactly. So,
So
so
so I think
oh, go
I
ahead.
would be like very very dutiful about doing my research on this, because my first instinct is to hear that, oh, they found a tomb with bones in it that they think are Jesus's. My first thought is to go, fake as all get out. Like, it's so fake. um, and to just dismiss it outright and go, that is not possible. Jesus that I believe in, rose from the dead, and I believe that with 100% of my being, you know. um, and so, um, yeah, I think but what I would have to do is to go and dig into it and be like, all right, who is saying this? Where did they find it? What evidence have they discovered that this is the case? What have they yeah, what tests have they run? And who found it, and who is behind all of this information that's coming out? What is their motivation for doing this? um, you know there would be so many questions that I would have to ask, and then I would have to weigh that with all of the evidence. I don't know if you've read like Case for Christ and Evidence That Demands a Verdict and all of these apologetic things that people have gone through, in order to prove the resurrection of Jesus. So I'd have to weigh, the evidence over here from this person who supposedly found this tomb against all of this other apologetic evidence that has been built up over the years, and go and really weigh the two and be like, which one weighs more? um you know I feel like that's the only way I could really approach that.
So the second question is, so what happens after you do all of that research and then you find out that it's valid and it's true? Just like so like, let's say you go dig into it and then you find out that Pastor Frank agrees with the finding. And then
Whoa.
all the respected leaders, people that have been going to Israel, they all said, look, as much as even the people you trust, as much as I don't want this to be true, this is true. We can validate that this is true.
Hmm.
What do you do then after that?
um I think I would have to do a lot of soul searching at that point to be like, okay, in light of this new information, it would, and I'm sure it would be a process, because yeah, for 26 years of my life, I have lived as though this were the case, as though Jesus rose from the dead. I have lived my life in as if that were true. And so I think if I learned and couldn't refute the fact that it was false, I would have to I would have to really do a lot of thinking about, like, okay, what do I do now? Because I think too, like, that being false, it it's not, that is not just a piece of information. That is a source of purpose, and and you're laughing at me. And, like, so it's like this thing I've been living my life for this entire time. Well, now I have to find something else to live my life for, apparently. you know yeah.
So what you've done is what we typically do, and I think it's wrong.
Oh, okay.
So basically what I heard is, um you first fought the truth because of its implication, but then you fought the truth hard
Not
until you
because of its
got.
implication, because that because not only because, so I would say I was not fighting it necessarily only because of how it would force me to change my worldview, but also because there is a lot of evidence to the contrary.
Yes, but okay,
So it's not just, it's
sure.
not just because I don't like it, it's also because I have learned a lot of reasons why Jesus' resurrection is
Yes,
true. And so in order to verify that it's true, I'm not just going to take that without even thinking about it. Of course I'm going to examine it to see if it's actually true, not just because it will upend my worldview. That's not the only reason I would do that.
right. So but then the issue there is, basically truth is now dependent on your choice. So if
No,
so
truth is
so
determined on which facts weigh more.
so if if the best and most qualified people to make the determination that that bone belongs to Jesus have done it, and there is a bipartisan, if you for the lack of a better word, agreement and universal agreement that it is true, right? Why do you personally need to go and x-ray the contrary on? Does that make sense? Because so what I'm basically getting at is, um my my take or my approach to it would be, okay, so this is true, fine. Let me, while I'm continuing to, like, validate and be sure and be firm that this is true, I'm gonna start understanding what is the implication, what needs to change, what is the delta, what does it impact, what does it affect. One of the things that I'll be looking at is there a misrepresentation? Is there maybe a scripture that actually tells us this would happen and we just skipped it? For example, what if there is a scripture that says that in the last days, Jesus's bones will reappear in the tomb, but it was kind of couched in like a metaphor in Isaiah?
Okay.
What if there's like a prophecy that has been written and all scholars have kind of not known how to interpret it, and then this event basically makes it clear as day?
Hmm.
So though I will start to attack those of, how can this be true, but then everything else that I know to be true that still largely remains true be true? I'll start looking for the harmony, right?
Mm.
How can I find the harmony between this? Because, for example, um, um, there's an assumption that if this is true, then my faith is a lie. Wrong.
Well,
My,
not
my, my,
necessarily. I mean, our faith does hinge on the resurrection of Christ.
so the fact that there is a physical body that's been identified to be Jesus doesn't mean that there was a resurrection.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Those are the things that in the same way that a virgin couldn't give birth and did,
Okay.
right? Like
Interesting.
when you look at the whole story, right? When you look at the whole story of the Bible and all that, it's full and laden with miracles. So 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 I don't know. So it's kind of one of those things where and this is how scientists figured when they found out the Earth is not flat. That's
Hmm.
exactly what they had to do. You don't throw out everything that you know or you assume to be true. It's how do we reinterpret all these things now that we have this big boulder of a truth that's
Hmm.
just going to run through a lot of our assumptions.
Okay. But okay, so I went into it assuming that there was not a a passage in Isaiah that says that you're gonna find a bone somewhere.
So
So
exactly,
so that's my question is then if you can't find a harmony like that, if if this new truth basically means that you have to throw out the old truth, what do you do with that? I mean, and that may not necessarily be the case, but sometimes it is.
you you never have to throw out the old truth. What you have to do is figure out what truth does it impact and how can you come into a more complete understanding of that truth. I'll give you an example because this thing we're talking about actually happens even now today,
Mm-hmm.
just maybe not as extreme.
Yeah.
Scientists say that the earth has existed for millions and millions of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Genesis story talks about 7-day creation.
Mm-hmm.
Why haven't we thrown away the Bible? What we do is we say the scientists are wrong. But it's the same scientists that archaeology digs up stuff that we find in the Bible, and then we say, yes, yes, I knew you
Or
guys were
we
doing
say
a
that the
great job.
scientists are interpreting the evidence in a different way than we are. Yeah.
Whatever the term is that we want to couch with it, right? So, I mean, I surmise to say, right, if it is true that the earth has existed for millions and millions and millions of years, the question we should be asking is, okay, first, I don't know if it's true, but we should first exhaust, is this true?
Right.
If it is true, right, and these guys are not being biased, go employ a Christian that has a God-fearing heart to enter into the methods and whatever. If that's true, the question then becomes, the first thing we rush to is, oh, now I got to throw out the Bible. It's like, no, 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 no. What if there is hidden in the Bible an explanation or interpretation that accounts for that? Or because we came in with the earth is flat mindset, we read it differently.
Mm,
Does that make sense?
interesting.
And then with this new information, you start to see it being hidden in plain sight, but you couldn't tell because you didn't have this information.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the idea, the long short of whatever is by being open-minded, what we get to do is we get to harden our core. But the process of hardening our core even more is the process of engaging new truth that shapes it, if you will. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, because we always want our core to be informed by truth. Obviously, we don't want our core to be something that is patently false,
Yep.
and then we're
Which
just
is more
hanging
dangerous.
on to that because it's the core. Yeah, I think absolutely that's definitely the case. But it's like then Yeah. I don't know where I'm going. Yeah.
Can you do me a favor?
Hmm.
Can you make sure you don't have any nightmares tonight?
Like wake up in the middle of the night. Someone made an archaeological discovery of Jesus' bones.
I can, I can just see you kind of leaving this conversation like, what are all the things that I've made assumptions for that could maybe change? Oh my gosh, this is because I know you're logical and I'm logical too. Like I'm probably gonna actually
Yeah.
think about it too, but
But that's the thing though, is I think still, even before we so I think I would agree with you in that, our core can be shaped by new truth that may not necessarily contradict what we already believe. It just maybe looks like it on the surface. But what I would say is that before that happens, before I think it's still important to have a rigorous amount of examination happen, before I decide, is this something that is this a new piece of information that is worth integrating into my core, or is this a piece of information that is not correct and that I can, not worry about? There's like a process I think that needs to happen of evaluating that. um
yes,
yeah.
yes, and I guess the gist of what I'm saying is that process shouldn't be determined by that process should simply be what is true.
Right.
You can have a framework for determining what is true, and it probably will change depending on what kind of truth it is.
Right.
But what oftentimes we do is we have a framework for determining what we are going to allow in to
Hmm.
our core, not necessarily what is the framework for what is true.
Right. Well, so that would require recognizing that some things in my core may or may not be true, but
Mhm.
I choose to cling to them anyway because this is the best I can do with the
Yep.
information that I have right now.
Yep.
But new information may come that may challenge those things, and so then you evaluate it against what you have in your core and go, is this one better than the one I already have? Or should it cause me to either get rid of the one I already have or adjust the one I already have to work with, the new thing that I've been given.
Not is it better. Not is this better. Is
Well,
this true?
yes, that's what I mean. Yeah. Is it
Key,
more
key,
true than the thing I've been?
key,
Yeah.
exactly. Key
Yeah.
distinction because we generally do is it better? Because better is it better for me? Is it better for me if I believe this?
Right.
But it's like no, 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 and that's the whole distinction of being closed-minded versus being open-minded. Being open-minded is I want to seek the truth, regardless of whether it's better for me or not.
Okay. See, I like that definition of open-minded better than the one that we were using earlier. I think it makes more sense.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like open-minded. It's like, yeah, is this true or not? Whether or not it's better for me is irrelevant. And then when I nail that it's true, then am I willing to assimilate that truth into my life?
Yeah.
But if I am closed-minded, then I am basically protecting my current version of truth because it's working for me, which means that I am not an honest seeker of truth.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm an honest seeker of what's good for the lapper, which is probably very true.
I feel like that's a natural part of being human.
Yep. Yep.
Is Yeah.
Okay. So this has been amazing, and um, yeah, this has been amazing, and I cannot believe all the different tangents we went to. But I love that we touched on examples, theories, practical. We even did like an application, did a real life scenario, and I hope it's something that is um, useful, valuable for people. Um, do you have any closing thoughts? Is there any part of this that still feels unresolved?
Um, no, I think we kind of covered a lot of territory. Yeah, yeah. I
Cool.
think this was really good.
Do you want to do maybe a quick recap? So just rephrase the questions and then maybe just give like quick bullet point answers on where you are leaving the conversation with as far as your answers to the questions, and then we can pray.
Okay. So yeah, so the questions were, yeah, what's necessary to have a healthy dialogue? That was kind of the main overarching question. And so I think we talked about that, where we were talking about the idea of open-mindedness, and that, yeah, that hard center and the soft edges idea there. And then we talked a lot about too the idea of how to present the truth to another person, and doing that, and we use that the burning building analogy and the doctor with the tumor analogy, and I think both of those were really helpful. And kind of we came to the conclusion of um, yeah, presenting the person with the truth, but allowing them to come to their own decision about it. Not overriding their own personal choice in the matter, but presenting them with what we have in a loving way, with the intention of making their life better, or redirecting them in a better direction. With the intention of helping them, and then allowing them to come to their own conclusion. And then we talked about, okay, what do we do when this happens to us? How do we what is a healthy way of responding when somebody tries to redirect us, when somebody tries to direct us out of the burning building? um, and yeah, how to respond, and by letting the truth, inform what, and we kind of came full circle. It is, with the back to that center and edges idea, where we allow the truth to inform what our center is, and don't hold so tightly to it that nothing will change our minds, or and we don't hold tightly to it also simply because it's comfortable, or simply because it's what we've always thought, or simply because it's easier, but we hold tightly to that center because we're convinced that it's true. Yeah, I don't know, does that cover it for
No,
you?
no, no, that was good. That was good. So yeah, so we pray, and then
Yeah,
I guess that wraps this edition up.
yeah, sounds
Okay.
good.
Actually, do you want to pray? I open.
Okay, yeah, sure, sounds good. Lord God, we just thank you just so much for this time, and as Delapo said earlier, just this opportunity to be that iron sharpening iron, Lord, and to challenge one another, um, and to really dig into these issues, and to really think through what we believe, Lord, and to come to a better understanding of what that center is, Lord. And we thank you that you are a God of truth. You are a God who values truth, and so and we know, Lord, too, that you value those who seek truth, Lord. And so we just thank you for that, and that you know what the truth is, Lord, and that as we come into a closer relationship with you, Lord, we come closer to what the truth is. And so we just thank you for the way that you've constructed our world as well, to make it possible for us to learn truth, Lord. That you didn't just leave us in the dark, that you chose give us evidence of things and to give us information about yourself and about the way you created the world, Lord, and you've left it there for us to discover, Lord. And so I just pray that we as human beings would we would not tire of constantly searching, Lord, for your truth, and constantly seeking to understand more about who you are and more about who we are and more about the world that you've created. And we just thank you for the awesome privilege that it is to search those things out. And just for this opportunity that you've given us today to do a little bit of that, Lord. And so we just we thank you and we praise you for all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Allison.
Yeah,
You wanna cut?
this was good.
You wanna cut the recording?
Yep.